Welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. Okay, guys, listen, we're going to hear about the 16 shots 16 and a half more times. Not that I'm disrespecting that, but, you know, to me as a prosecutor, it's just a little bit too much overkill, a little dramatics, and you have autopsy photos. Now you got diagrams coming up there. Okay, so we have also another guest on the show. We are humming today. We have stuff going on all over the place. Gene Rossi out of D.C., and his Twitter handle, at Rossi4VA, out of Washington. This 27, I believe you had, as a U.S. prosecutor, U.S. attorney, you must have had 110 trials and 90 jury trials. Gene, is that right?
I have a list if you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And I wish I could say I won. I wish I could say I won all of them.
Yeah, well, listen, I like that because I like people who've been around the block. You've done police corruption, narcotics, special prosecutions, trained over 1,000 prosecutors, multiple law enforcement. I checked you out before you got on the show. I want to see who I was dealing with, and I got mad respect for what you're doing. Moreover, perhaps I don't mean to be disrespectful, more respect for the idea, if I understand this, is that you were an all-state basketball player in Connecticut with a 1,300 career point and one game that you scored 41 points. Do I have that right?
In 32 minutes, and there was no three-point shot. Yes, 41 points.
Excellent, excellent.
I remember every point.
Well, that means you're a competitor. So you're here to talk to us about this Kavanaugh scenario that's breaking and going out with respect to all the issues. So you can give me a thumbnail right now. Do you have a feeling or a sentiment one way or another based upon Dr. Ford's information, professor that came forward and said that she was sexually assaulted 30 years ago, as to whether or not, forget about the politics, I'm just asking you legally, that this can be a fair hearing when they're not going to call the third party, the other party she identified being in the room, and the FBI will not conduct any investigation, which typically they do with background investigations for public integrity purposes. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts is this. The process is terrible. When you have an allegation like this, and I know it's over 30 years ago, the first thing you do as a prosecutor or a person on the Senate Judiciary Committee is you have at least 2 or 3 FBI agents assigned to that case that interview the victim, alleged victim, the alleged accused, any witness, including Mr. Judge, and you do due diligence to find out if there's any corroboration, anybody who was also at the party. It is a travesty, an absolute travesty, that they are not doing an investigation before Dr. Christine Ford testifies and before Brett Kavanaugh testifies. Here's what upsets me the most. There is no motive for Dr. Ford to lie. Why in the world would a professor married with children in her 50s make up a story out of whole cloth to take down a Supreme Court nominee? And then you have the psychiatrist's notes. This had to be a traumatic event. That you mentioned this in 2007 and it happened in the 1980s, that event must have been extremely devastating to her that she still was talking about it in 2007 to a psychiatrist. So I feel very badly for Dr. Ford because she submitted a confidential letter. It came out, but you have to investigate that allegation. And as a prosecutor, you're a prosecutor too. Of course, the statute of limitations is gone. Unless you're in Virginia, by the way, we don't have a statute of limitations for felonies. But in Maryland, I think the statute is gone. But even if you could prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt, we're talking about a political event to appoint a judge for life. The burden of proof at the Senate hearing is not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's beyond public acceptance. And the public should not accept a justice on the Supreme Court with this allegation hanging over his head, period.
We got 2 minutes, and I love what you're saying. I agree with you. But here's the thing that gets to me. As a prosecutor who prosecuted sex crimes, many of them, many times victims come 20, 30 years later, and the very people who are denying her this investigation are the ones that tout when it's the little guy, oh, let's extend the statute of limitations because it's all feel good about women, and typically women don't come forward, or maybe those who are victims of clergy abuse, or those who are victims of incest, or those who are victims of school teachers that do this. And that is in fact correct until it comes down to one of my boys. Then when it comes down to one of my boys, we suspend everything else. We don't do any investigation, and we just basically rely on, and I'm going to get to your point. She didn't just report it to 3 people, the therapist, a friend, and her husband. She takes a polygraph to try to show, and you know that's a valid investigative tool, and she's also a person who puts in the room someone she knows is a friend of his and would not be an ally of hers. When you're looking at that in prosecutor world, and I'm curious about how you'd be looking at it, you look at that with the eye of credibility that she's going to put herself on the line. And here's the line that I've been using. Maybe someone else is picking it up. She is, why he is in the White House and he is being prepped, I always say, like tea and crumpets. She's in a safe house now in fear of her life. That is not the actions of a person that doesn't have a story to tell. Why are they depriving her of her right to be able to speak? Why are we rushing this to judgment?
You know why we're rushing into judgment? Because on November 6th of this year, the Democrats are going to take back the House and likely take back the Senate. There is going to be not a blue wave, a blue tsunami. And Mitch McConnell and all the older white males on the Senate Judiciary Committee knows that this is the battle royale. They got to get it done now. And if they push it back a few weeks, he won't be confirmed. And I want to go to one thing, motive again. Who has the most motive here? And you were a prosecutor. Who has the most motive here to lie? Brett Kavanaugh. And I was on your show a couple of weeks ago analyzing Brett Kavanaugh's testimony, and I got to tell you, there were moments when I wanted to throw up because his answers were so evasive. So evasive.
Well, you bring up a very important point too that we should make sure our viewers realize, that it is not just about the fact that whether this allegation occurred or didn't occur. And let me just full stop there for our audience. As a prosecutor myself, and I'm sure you as well, we have tried the quote unquote he said, she said. She can just get up there with not one single piece of additional evidence and a jury can convict beyond a reasonable doubt. But as you've indicated, we have a lot of positive stuff that shows that she was actually doing this. She's the one that wants the FBI investigation. They're the ones that don't. She's the one that's taking a polygraph. They're the ones that not. She's the one that wants to call the other witness that was in the room and the other individuals, and they won't do it. So that credibility points to her. But one last point I want to get to with you. What about the credibility issues? You're a judge. You make people swear oaths before you. You expect people tell the truth. And here you are, and I'm not saying he's guilty by any stretch of the imagination. Forget about the criminal case. Maybe the statute ran on that. But this is one about public integrity, which is why the FBI should be investigating. And if you have said that this did not happen, not that I don't remember, not that I used to do a lot of drinking in high school, like his friend said, and we used to do bad things. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I just don't recall. That's one thing. But to categorically state that she's a liar means either she's a liar or he's a liar. And as you aptly put, my last point, I'll throw back to you. We don't have to prove that beyond the reasonable doubt. He's not entitled to the presumption of innocence because he's looking for a job, and he can't hide behind the Fifth Amendment like he can in a criminal court because he's looking for a job. Thoughts?
Yes. If this had happened 3 years ago, you and I would both try this case because I used to love defendants that would double down. I used to love defendants that didn't say, oh, I was there, but she misinterpreted me or she was mistaken. He's saying he wasn't there and it didn't happen. There is no possible way in the world that Dr. Ford made this event up in whole cloth and has the wrong man. She knows exactly what he did. And this I want to add. We're not talking about a guy who got drunk and tried to put the moves on her, and she said no. He almost smothered her. He almost killed her, according to the witness.
But G. Rossi,
that's pretty bad stuff.
I could talk to you this all day long, and I am not saying that the judge did this, but the fact that legislators, people that have hearings, refuse to give her the opportunity to present her case, give her time to prepare, let her call witness, subpoena witnesses, is an outrage to her and Judge Kavanaugh. Loved having you on. We'll get you back on the pretty soon on this, because I know we're going to do an update. I wish we could have spoken for many more minutes. Law&Crime Network, thank you very much. We'll be back on the other end.